Today's episode of Locked On MLB is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline, which is the number one spot for all your online betting needs. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And now we're going to start Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball, and I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you're watching me right here, check out my lower third. You can always call me Sully. I am a Emmy-nominated television producer for my work on all sorts of shows across television. I've been a filmmaker, a writer, a comedian, and I've been a podcaster for the last 10 some odd years. I've been part of the Locked On Podcast Network since 2019, back when things were normal. We didn't think they were normal then, but boy, we did not know any better. Hey, you can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at our handle, which is Locked On MLB Pods. You can follow me. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. If you happen to be watching us on the live stream, throw in a question. Hey, it's David S. Blaine, by the way, is following us. Thanks for jumping aboard. And anyone else who wants to jump aboard and say anything along with us, feel free. Jump right on. Jump right on. In fact, I'll just show you. Where's David S. Blaine? There he is. There he is. Say, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for listening to the show. We're going to be talking about all sorts of fun things on today's show. But as David S. Blaine is on there saying hello and listening to the show, I want to address another comment that I got, not on Twitter or on Instagram, but actually on YouTube. Some of you are watching this on YouTube. A longtime fan of the show who goes by Panorama Jazz Band and Panorama Brass Band. That's not his given name. That's the band that he's part of and is a fan of the show. He was talking about the show that I did maybe a couple of days ago, where I was praising the heck out of Dusty Baker, and I was talking about the Astros' chances, and along the way talking about the wild card in general. And now, just one thing you need to know about Panorama Jazz Band, Panorama Brass Band, say that 5 times fast. Rabid Baltimore Orioles fan, constantly comments about the Orioles on the YouTube page. And this is what he said. As of 8/12 of that podcast, I've heard you discuss the Yanks, the Rays, the Jays, the Twins, and the Red Sox. Anybody else in the AL wildcard race worth mentioning? Ha ha. I think I know what he means. Baltimore. Now, look I don't mean to say anything and disparaging about my current favorite jazz band and brass band out there. There's about 20 games left of the season, and the Baltimore Orioles are 4 games back. 4 games back. And everything's going to have to go right. Everything is going to have to go right for the Orioles to realistically have a spot in the wild card round this year. Now, let's just take a quick look at something. And you know I love to do this. Let's go back to, let's see, when they went on a big win streak and they beat Oakland 8-1 on, it was just before Labor Day. They beat up Oakland 8-1, and with that, they crept to within a game and a half, 2 games in the loss column of Toronto. And since that day, Baltimore has gone 4-6, which is not horrible, but not what you're supposed to be doing. They were going to face Toronto. They were on the cusp. If they had won the series against Toronto, they would have pulled to within half a game. If they swept them, they would have overtaken them. Instead, they lost that series to Toronto. They played 4 games, and they lost 3 of them. You can't do that. You got swept in a doubleheader at home, and then they wound up losing a series to Boston. You can't do that. You can't lose a series to Boston, of which one game the Red Sox scored 17 runs, another game they scored 1 run, and the Red Sox won both of them. Now, they won both of the games against Washington, and now they're going to be playing Toronto over this weekend. And now look at what is happening in Baltimore is fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm looking this up here right now. So they're right now they are 4 games behind Toronto and Tampa Bay in the loss column. So if they beat up Toronto in this series and they wind up playing Houston and the Yankees and Toronto again, sure, there is an outside possibility that they can come in and really contend. But even if they don't, and they probably won't, even if they don't, the Baltimore Orioles have laid down a tremendous foundation for 2023 and beyond. And you take a look at this team. Yeah, they shouldn't have traded Trey Mancini. Mancini has been kind of a bust in Houston. They have Santander, they have Mullins, they have Ramon Urias, they have Austin Hayes, they have Gunnar Henderson getting hits left and right. Rutschman looks like a star. Mountcastle is still only 25. Rugador is only 28. And the likes of Wells and Kremer and Bradish are all in the right side of 25. Wells is over. But, I mean, they are a good young team. And for the first time since Buck Showalter let Ubaldo Jimenez face Juan Encarnacion in the wild card game, the Orioles are relevant for the first time. And it's a fun team. It's a team that is taking that first step. And I'll tell you something. The team that, sometimes you have to have a transition year, especially if you've been irrelevant for a few years. And you saw that with, the example I always love to give is Kansas City turned things around in 2013. And they had a winning season. They contended. They didn't make the playoffs, but they contended. And that core of players, the Moustakas, the Perez, the Lorenzo Cain, the Eric Hosmer, the Gore, they all worked well together, played well together, played meaningful games down the stretch, came up short, but the next year were ready to really contend. And they wound up winning back-to-back pennants, winning the World Series in 2015. Orioles fans should hope to have a run like that. So, I think it might be a stretch to call the Orioles still legit contenders at this point. But first of all, they could play well down the stretch and basically, give the fans hope for, some fun down the stretch and everything like that. But they can also lay down such a terrific foundation, such legitimate groundwork to have something to be happy about in Baltimore. And you know what? Baseball's just better when the Orioles are good. They're a great franchise. They play in one of the best stadiums in all of baseball. They have a wonderful history, a wonderful tradition. And when the Orioles are doing well, Baltimore loves that team. And now they have young players they can get attached to. And if they don't mess this up, if they go out and they get like maybe 1 or 2 decent parts to place in the middle of this team and move forward into 2023, maybe with one veteran pitcher to put in there, maybe one big veteran hitter to sort of anchor the DH spot. This Orioles team they could be in a better place than Tampa and Boston and might be able to take a shot at the Yankees and the Rays. Absolutely. So look I'm sorry I neglected to talk to him about that particular day. Maybe there was nothing to talk about with them, but who knows? What I'm saying is I want my favorite jazz band, brass band to get off my back a little bit about not harping about their Orioles all the time. I would love to see them do well. I'd love to see them win. And Rutschman and Gunnar, these all look like the real players to build a foundation for the next bunch of years. It's probably not going to be this year, But next year, who knows? Who knows? Maybe next year, the Baltimore Orioles could become that surefire bet to make themselves a playoff team. And if you're going to make any bets, go to betonline.net. It's your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchup news, and podcasts. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Hey, I read an interesting quote, and it's strange that it's interesting, about Aaron Judge and his quest to set the American League home run record this year. And notice how I phrase that. He is on a rampage to earn that. Now let's open up baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of planet Earth. Aaron Judge is, either he's going to win the MVP or Ohtani. I'm going to give it to Judge just because of everything he's done in terms of the offensive power. Do you like traditional stats? Do you not like these fancy sabermetric stats? Well, how about runs? Judge has scored the most runs. How about home runs? He's hit the most home runs. How about RBIs? He's the most RBIs. How about walks? He has the most walks. He has the highest on-base percentage, the highest slugging percentage. And if you like some more, more stats, he's has the highest OPS. He has the highest OPS plus. He has the most total bases. He's doing everything that you could absolutely want. And if you like some of the more, stranger stats that I don't understand in the slightest, let's see, base out wins added, he leads the league. Situation wins added, leads the league. Win probability added, leads the league. Base out run scores, leads the league. Power speed number, second. Who's he second to? Power speed number second to I don't even know what that. I don't even know what power speed number to Rodriguez in Seattle. If you like traditional stats, you like sabermetric stats. He is the highest WAR. If you like just the eyeball test, he does everything right. There is no reason. He is absolutely, in my opinion, the MVP of the American League. I'd be stunned if he doesn't win it. Absolutely stunned if he doesn't win it. He's sitting at 57 home runs, 5-7, as he's approaching the American League record for home runs in a single season, which is Roger Maris, which is 7th all-time in the single season home run record. Now, there are many people who believe Roger Maris remains the king of the all-time home run for the American and National League, which leads to the quote that was sent to me, which is 73 is the record in my book, referring to Bonds. No matter what people want to say about that era of baseball, for me, they went out there, hit 73 home runs and 70 home runs, and that to me is what the record is. Now, the strange thing is that that's a controversial statement. Roger Maris sits at 7th in the all-time single-season home run record. Ahead of him that's with 61. Sammy Sosa hit 63 in 1999, 64 in 2001. Mark McGwire hit 65 in 1999. Sosa hit 66 in 1998. McGwire hit 70 in 1998. Barry Bonds hit 73 in 2001. Babe Ruth's 60 home runs from 1927 is now 8th all time. And you have to go down the most home runs by an American leaguer not on the Yankees is Jimmy Fox and Hank Greenberg each got 58 home runs. Giancarlo Stanton is on the list, by the way, but as a Marlin. So right now, Judge is tied for the 15th highest single-season home run record. Okay, look at. He makes a great point, And he makes a great point in that, look at, you may not like the fact that I rattled off Bonds, a couple by McGuire, a couple by Sosa ahead of Roger Maris. But that's what it is. I can prove it in a court of law. Now, you may not like that. You may not personally respect it as much, but that's the case. Sometimes you have to put those asterisks in your head, kind of like how I don't acknowledge that the sequels of Jaws exist. And I try not to think about the Star Wars prequels. I can watch them without acknowledging that they exist, but they're there, whether I like them or not. Back to baseball, you may look at the 2007 World Series and have your head slightly tilted like the RCA dog because there was some shenanigans going on there. They were, but history has recorded that the Astros won the 2017 World Series, just like the Cincinnati Reds defeated the White Sox in the 1919 World Series, even though we know that the White Sox threw the series. That's the whole point of Shirtless Joe. That's the whole point of Field of Dreams, was the scandal of the blown World Series, or the thrown World Series, I meant to say. Now, you may not look at that the same way you would look at other World Series championships, but the fact of the matter is the Reds did, in fact, win it. Whether it was on the level or not, I don't know. We've learned a lot about the Bobby Thompson home run against the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1951, that they were using an elaborate system, including binoculars and everything. And so Bobby Thompson's home run may not have been on the level. But the fact of the matter is, it happened, it existed, and that's how we have our record book. Now, if you're mad about that, I really can't do anything about it. You don't have to like it. I didn't like the Attack of the Clones and the Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith and all that stuff. And these new ones, forget it. I don't even remember what happened in The Rise of Skywalker. So I don't have to acknowledge those. I can enjoy and appreciate the Star Wars movies I like and sort of block out those other ones. But I have to admit they exist. You may not like Bonds and McGuire and Sosa on that list. And I totally understand. But the fact of the matter is they exist. They exist and they're real. Whether you want them to be real, whether they are the ones in your mind, that's a you issue. And I'm not going to tell, I would never in 10 quadrillion years, I would not go back a long time ago to a galaxy far, far away to tell someone to look at Bonds with the same reverence as they would for Ruth. But remember, they did the same thing to Maris by putting a freaking asterisk next to his statistic when it happened. There were people who didn't acknowledge Maris, which makes me think in 10, 20 years, people will be respecting Bonds and Sosa McGuire left and right. I think they'll absolutely be doing that when people look back and say, why aren't McGuire and Sosa in the Hall of Fame? Why not? That's what will happen a generation or so from now. But Judge is right. Now, if he gets these home runs and passes Maris, being the all-time American League single-season home run champion is nothing to sneeze at. That's quite an impressive. And in fact, it is strange with all the home runs flying out and all the 60 home run seasons that took place during the steroid era, that they were all National Leaguers and not American Leaguers who passed the 60 home run mark. You don't have to like it, but it's real. It happened. It's tangible. I can prove it in a court of law. They are the home run champions. And you don't have to like it. You don't even have to acknowledge it. But we can't live in the different reality. That is what the record book says. If you don't like it, well, root for someone to break it. All right, we got a big weekend going on here, but hey, we got the chat going on here. So let's see what's going on in the chat right now. David Samuel says, I'm a fan of the Los Angeles Dodgers, New York Yankees, New York Mets, Toronto Blue Jays, Pittsburgh Pirates, Cincinnati Reds, and the Miami Marlins. So, well, here's what I like about David. He casts a wide net. That's a pretty dang wide net. So I think in some ways you may be happy this year. You certainly a lot of the teams you root for are going to be in the postseason. I'm not and David, you're a good fan, and you're a good fan, and obviously you dig your teams. There's right. If you're watching it, there it is. I'm posting it on there. Um, Here's the question I'm going to ask you, because yes, you could like all those teams, and I think you could like more than one team. I'm not going to tell someone how to like something, how to feel joy. The question for you would be, if one of those teams faced off, which one are you rooting for? And you kind of have to almost create like a tournament of the brain. Yeah, you like the Blue Jays and the Marlins and the Reds and the Dodgers and da 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 da. If they face each other off and it gets down to that final game, that final pitch, who are you looking for? Who are you looking for? Hey, also you wrote that the Mets massacred the Pirates. Yeah, they did, and it was a much needed win for the Mets. Here's a question I have: it was Roberto Clemente Day, and they were wearing number 21. There was a great ceremony involving Clemente's son and grandson and everything like that. Why wasn't that game played in Pittsburgh? Why was that game played at Citi Field? Seriously, Clemente played for the Pirates. Why couldn't they have played at the Clemente Day at the home of Roberto Clemente? I don't know. But yes, indeed, the Mets got that win. Much, much needed win for there. There's someone whose name is, I'm going to pronounce it Sukit. Sukit. How about that? Your thoughts if the Giants, I assume, can get him, meaning Aaron Judge? No. I do think Aaron Judge is going to go back to the Yankees. I think it's just going to come down to it. I think he's going to win the MVP. I think the Yankees are going to go, play as deep as they can in the postseason. The Yankees can't afford to not re-sign him. So there you go. Sukit says Star Wars Rise of Skywalker is good. Hey, I'm not going to tell you what to like. If you liked it, great. If you liked it, fantastic. I didn't care for it, but it's also because I'm very precious with my Star Wars. I admit it. I'm a 50-year-old dude who grew up on Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi. So the new ones feel a little weird to me. If I grew up with these, they might be my movies. I don't know. I'm a little precious with my Star Wars. I'm the first to admit it. Bond's in the Hall of Fame. No, he's not. He's not in the Hall of Fame. Should he be? Absolutely. He's one of the greatest players in baseball history. And someone did the calculations. If he just kept up his stats with the same level as he did before he ballooned up, would he have passed Mays and Aaron? No, he merely would have been the equivalent of Stan Musial, who also is one of the 10 greatest players of all time. He's one of the greatest players of all time. Should be in the Hall of Fame. You don't have to like him. There's a lot of players in the Hall of Fame I don't like. A lot of people in the Hall of Fame I don't like. Take out Tom Yawkey. Take out Bobby Cox. I don't like them, but they're in there. You don't have to like Bonds, but he belongs in there. Do you think the Cardinals, so you think, who do you think will make the wild cards is what Sukit asked. I thought he was asking me if I thought the Cardinals were going to make the wild card. I think the Cardinals are going to win the division. They could win the World Series. I don't see any real surprises in the wild card right now. I talked a little bit about Baltimore. Baltimore is the only team knocking on a wild card berth, and they've got a long, long road to make up in only 20 games. Mariners, Blue Jays, and Rays, and with only 20 games remaining and basically one game in the loss column separating those three teams, frankly, that is the definition of a coin toss. I'll go on a limb and I'll say the Blue Jays will have the best overall record, and Seattle and Tampa Bay will also be in there just because I like their talent. Now, the National League wild card race is actually interesting because the Brewers have pulled to within one game in the loss column, 1.5 game overall of San Diego for one of the wild card positions. So that could get interesting down the stretch. I think Philadelphia is securing their spot. I think San Diego is going to hold on, and Milwaukee will be on the outside looking in. AL and NL MVPs, Judge, and I say Goldschmidt. Cy Young, if you asked me just a couple of weeks ago, I probably would have said Verlander in the American League. Um, I may still do that. I don't know. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough for me right now. But hmm. You know what? I'll stick with Verlander until further notice. Sandy Alcantara is in the National League for me. Comeback player. I haven't given it any thought yet. The rules changes. I talked about the rules changes on the Monday episode. And don't be sorry, Suki. What the heck's your problem? The rule changes. I am all for every rule change. I think the pitch clock is imperative. Keep it moving. I don't want. I like having abandoned the shifts because I just want to see more offense there. The bigger bases, as I said on the show the other day, let's not get precious about our bases. The bases have changed in the past, and they're going to change again. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. So hey, thanks for thanks for chiming in and asking a question. See, are there any other questions? Pete Rose should be in. Okay, this is a whole other podcast. I've talked a lot about Pete Rose and about why why the betting on games, even if you're betting on them to win, it is a bad thing for the game. But I've also made the point that we're looking at the Pete Rose question wrong. It isn't should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame? Of course he should in terms of what he did on the field. The question is, does Pete want to be? I'm sure he'd like to be. I've made this point before. I believe that Pete doesn't want to be because the nanosecond he's in the Hall of Fame, he's no longer a story. He's no longer relevant. He's next relevant when he dies. He's in the Hall of Fame. What else is there? Why would Pete Rose ever be in the news now? Why would Pete Rose ever be on the public conversation of baseball? Willie Mays is the greatest player, arguably the greatest player of all time. He's still alive. And the only time in recent years he's come up in any conversation has been when the Mets retired his number. There are wonderful Hall of Famers who are still alive, who nobody talks about. And Pete Rose is still talked about every single year we have Cooperstown, the election. And he sets up at Cooperstown. He sells his autograph at Cooperstown and all this. He gets to play the martyr. But he got chances over and over and over again to get reinstated. And every single time he had that chance, he spat it back in their face. Pete, show us that you're rehabilitating yourself. Show us you're doing better. Then he sells his story for profit in the book, which put him in a bad light and confirmed that he had been lying to all the people who could have gotten him in over the years. And he told the truth only if he got a profit from it. A few years ago, they were looking to reinstate Pete and said, Pete, show us you're not just gambling all the time. Show us you're moving away from the gambling life. And he set up a press conference outside of a casino in Las Vegas, where I believe there was gambling. Pete isn't in the Hall of Fame because he doesn't want to be in the Hall of Fame. Let me rephrase that. He'd like to be in the Hall of Fame. He'd rather make money from it. He'd rather make money from not being in the Hall of Fame and playing the martyr card so he can sign the martyr card and make some dough. So he's not in the Hall of Fame at his own choosing because he gets to play the martyr card. Think about it. You asked that question, Sukit. Hey, Sukit, tell me in the chat how old you are. Just type in the chat how old you are, okay? I'm curious about something. I saw Pete Rose play in 1981 when he was with the Phillies. It was towards the end of his career. He was no longer the MVP of the league or anything like that. But if Sukit types in, I hope he's one of the ones still listening here. If he types in how old he is, we can do a fun experiment here, which I think will kind of sort of let you know why I'm saying what I'm saying. Pete Rose last played a game in 1986 when he was a player manager of the Reds and a shell of his former self. He was no longer, forget an elite player, he was basically a pinch hitter. He was no longer a factor in the in Major League Baseball after the early 80s. He stuck around, he earned the all-time hit record. And then what year is it here? It is it is 2022. How many years ago was 1986? That was 36 years ago. 36 years ago, he last played his game. Using the rule of 7, if you are 42 years or older, you don't really have a concrete memory of Pete playing. And that was Pete at the end of his life, or the end of his baseball life. So let's talk 82. And so if it was 82, then we're really talking, what, 40 years? 40 years since he was last a relevant baseball player? Using the rule of 7, if you have to be 47 years old, 47 years old or younger, you don't really have a image of Pete Rose as a relevant ball player. And yet he's still in the conversation. And he knows that. And he knows that if he gets in there, yeah, he gets his great ceremony. And now it's going to be a little harder for him because we're finding out these things about him that are not good. Not good, Pete. And if he had just sought the reinstatement back in 2002, back in 2009, he'd be in the Hall of Fame right now. But then he couldn't profit from it. He would no longer be in the conversation. Or I guess Sukit may be gone. I had asked him to post his age in there. But if he is younger than 47 years old, then my point has been proven. But we're gonna have a fun weekend of baseball coming up. It is baseball. What am I Canadian right now? Let's go look to see what is happening in the schedule for the weekend. I know the Mets are going to continue to play the Pittsburgh Pirates, which all the talk about an easy schedule. The Mets have lost some key games to some bad teams like Washington and Chicago. They got to start winning because they don't want to have the Braves creep up to them. Atlanta, by the way, for those of you keeping the score at home, Atlanta's will be playing the Phillies. Max Fried against Suarez. That should be a good series because the Phillies are trying to secure their playoff spot, and the Braves have images of repeating as National League Eastern champions dancing in their head. The Rockies and Cubs and the Marlins and Nationals are going to play in front of friends and family. The aforementioned Baltimore Orioles are heading to Toronto, and the Orioles have better win these games if they want to climb back into it. The hope for the Red Sox to finish the season with a 500 or better record, they're going to have to beat up the Royals. Michael Wacha, who has been outstanding with the Red Sox, is pitching, and Sox fans better hope they get the taste of the Yankee series out of their mouth. I mentioned Mets Pirates. The Rays are playing the Rangers. Kluber is pitching, coming off of a terrible game against the Yankees. The Rays are looking, the hope for them to win the division is probably not there. They're going to have a scrum for the final, which is going to be in the wild card spots. The Twins are playing the Guardians after the Guardians lost a one-game makeup to Chicago, the White Sox, earlier today. The Twins basically have to sweep if they want to get back into it because the horrific series that they had at home against Cleveland has done everything but sink their season. The White Sox and the Tigers, White Sox better hope. What the White Sox better hope for is that the Guardians and Twins get into a big tussle and they can sweep the Tigers. Step one, Giolito, who has been inconsistent, going up against Manning of Detroit, who's actually a pretty talented pitcher. The A's and the Astros are going on. Justin Verlander comes back to the game on Friday as the A's are visiting the Astros. If Verlander is back in full form, guess what? This is going to be an interesting October there. The Cardinals looking to secure the National League Central. Jack Flaherty is hitting the mound for the Cardinals. The Cardinals hope that he can play healthy and be part of the playoff roster. The Yankees are trying to clinch a division title, and the Brewers are kind of trying to scramble back into the wild card race. It's Frankie Montas versus Adrian Hauser. I'm predicting a 10-9 game in that one. The Mariners inching closer to that first trip to the postseason since 2001. Robbie Ray is back in MVP, or at least Cy Young form, against Michael Lorenzen. Padres and Blake Snell are trying to get back into the playoffs and hold off said Brewers. Madison Bumgarner, remember him? He's pitching for Arizona. Last year, when the schedules were made up, I bet they thought that the Giants-Dodgers series would have been for a lot more than Giant pride or the Dodgers hoping to win 100 games. It's been a rough year for San Francisco, but, a few more wins, they may be able to avoid 90. Well, look it. This is it. There we go. Thanks for listening. This has been the weekend preview, chat, talk, and discussing the true home run champion, whether you like it or not. This has been Locked On MLB for the 16th day of July 2022. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.